Okay, so everyone remembers from the preview to In Cosmetics that we introduced Lipomulse Eco at In Cosmetics and Suppliers Day. And the first part of this presentation is actually, for those of you who attended the preview for In Cosmetics, the first few slides will talk about just an introduction to Lipomulse Eco. So with Lipomulse Eco, we know that this is a green emulsifier system. It was developed to be cost-effective, and it can be an alternative to traditional emulsifier systems, as well as an alternative to other natural emulsifier systems. So why did Vantage decide to look at developing Lipomulse Eco? Well, one, we know that in the marketplace it has become a continuing or more negative perception of ethoxylated compounds. And a high percentage of the emulsifiers used now are ethoxylated. And Vantage, with our production facility in Gurney, produces a very wide range of ethoxylated emulsifiers. So as Lipo, over the years, we have been trying to introduce more natural products into our product line. So it was decided to work on a project to have new natural emulsifiers. So that's the reason we started the project with Lipomulse Eco. And then what we did was back then, which is about 3 years ago now, we interviewed customers in the U.S. and a few customers in Europe to see what were their concerns or desires with a new natural emulsifier system. And the very first priority, or the top request, was for a more cost-effective system. Because the formulators talked about how there were other options. There are many natural emulsifiers, we're aware of that, but they're higher priced. So many formulators are not able to use these higher priced emulsifier systems. So the first priority when we introduced or we started to develop Lipomulse Eco was to have a emulsifier that would be cost effective with a reasonable price. The second thing that customers told us about with natural emulsifiers was that sometimes they were not easy to use, sometimes there were problems with efficiency, or versatility. So the next priority was to develop an emulsifier that would be easy to use and it would be versatile. So the goals for Lipomulse Eco were cost-effective, easy to use, efficient, and of course, a natural emulsifier from sustainable resources. So that's how we started this project. So what Vantage Personal Care, or Lipo, was doing, we were focused on building this new green platform as a first step to provide EO-free alternatives with both a high and a low HLB emulsifier that were cost-effective, plant-derived, and easy to use, and were versatile. So we had a number of goals. So Lipomulse Eco, these are the first products that will be launched from this R&D project. So I think everyone's aware from the previews and from listening to me talk when we have our labs meeting that there are the Lipomulse Eco product line right now will be 3 new emulsifiers. These are Lipomulse Eco H, which is the high HLB, Lipomulse, and then we introduced 2 low HLBs, and I'll show the difference in a moment. Lipomulse Eco L, which is one of the 2 low HLBs, and Lipomulse Eco L2. It's the second of the low HLB emulsifiers. So the concept here, these are oil and water emulsifiers, and it will be to use a pair or a pair in order to create the emulsifier system at the desired HLB. So the customer or the lab or your lab would be using Lipomulse Eco H and Lipomulse Eco L to form an emulsifier pair, or you would be using Lipomulse Eco H with Lipomulse Eco L2 to form an emulsifier pair. I'm not sure what the beeping is, but anyone who might have a phone that's beeping, please turn it off. Can everyone still hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Good. I wasn't sure what was happening. I wanted to make sure I wasn't disconnected. Okay. So then continuing, we'll take a look at these new emulsifiers. These emulsifiers are developed using natural source propane diol. And what we did was we created a polymer, a polypropane diol polymer, as the basis for this new product line. So for the case of, or in the case of Lipomulse Eco H, the high HLB, this is the polypropane diol polymer with a glycerin insertion, and we have the reaction then with stearic acid to form the polyglycerin propane diol stearate. Okay, and I'm still not certain what this beeping is. So hopefully it will stop in a moment. It almost sounds like a busy signal. Okay. Then continuing, so we'll have Lipomulse Eco H, which is the high HLB. And then the second of the polymeric emulsifiers is Lipomulse Eco L2, which is the low HLB. And now this is the reaction of the polymer, the polypropane diol, with stearic acid to form the polypropane diol stearate. So Lipomulse Eco H and Lipomulse Eco L2 are based on a polymer. Then we also decided to introduce Lipomulse Eco L. Lipomulse Eco L is the second of the low HLBs, and this is the reaction of propane diol and stearic acid. So here, this emulsifier is a non-polymer. The reason we decided to introduce the Lipomulse Eco L and the Lipomulse Eco L2 is because when you use either one with Lipomulse Eco H or the high HLB emulsifier, you're able to obtain somewhat different results. So to have some additional versatility, we decided to introduce both of the low HLB emulsifiers. And I'll mention as I talk through this presentation what some of the differences are between using L or L2. And most of it has to do with viscosity that can be achieved. Okay. So as far as samples of Lipomulse Eco, right now, if you order samples, some of the countries already do have samples. All of the products right now are in a solid form, and we are continuing to investigate what the final form will be, but it is very close to being determined. So the color, these are low color, somewhat waxy texture materials, and they are very low in odor. And if you look at formulations, or you observe formulations that are created with Lipomulse Eco, and you smell them, you'll find that there is basically very low odor in all of these formulations. So the emulsifiers themselves are odorless or very low odor. So no issues with odor. So what are the key benefits? The key benefits are that the Lipomulse Eco series are derived from renewable plant-based resources. These resources are sustainable. These are not ethoxylated, so they're non-EO, and therefore they're 1,4-dioxane free. We saw they are solid, so they need to be heated to use them in a formulation. But they're easy to use and formulate using a hot process emulsification procedure, the standard procedure that we would typically use in our labs or that customers use, and I'll talk about that in a moment. They are compatible with anionic and cationic actives and excipients. We've done recent work creating a hair conditioner with Lipomulse Eco. We saw no problems with the cationic active, so we don't anticipate any problems or incompatibility. Another key benefit is that Lipomulse Eco does promote the formation of liquid crystals for enhanced stability of emulsions. We know that scientists have investigated the formation of liquid crystals in emulsions for many years. And the conclusion is that systems or emulsions that contain liquid crystals are typically more stable than emulsions that do not contain liquid crystals. So Lipomulse Eco is a liquid crystal forming emulsifier pair, so customers should see good stability in the formulation. Also, another benefit from liquid crystals is a very white, shiny, or glossy appearance to the emulsion. And when you look at emulsions created with Lipomulse Eco, they're very shiny and they're very glossy. Also, continuing with benefits, you can use Eco to create a wide range of viscosities, from lotions to creams to butter. Also, for versatility, viscosity performance can be enhanced by changing mixing speeds, and I'm going to look at that, and I'll show that, and we'll see some of the data. And Eco can be used to prepare high oil phase formulations with natural oils and sunscreen. So another benefit with Lipomulse Eco. Okay. So now we're going to take a look at a lot of the information that we've generated or produced in the lab in Warren. So we're going to look at performance and use. So we're going to look at how to use Lipomulse Eco. We're going to observe the ease of use and versatility of the emulsifier pair. We're going to look at the performance in our original test system, so you can see how we developed Eco and how it's performing. We'll look at the effect of changing mixing speeds and also how time or aging affects the viscosity of Lipomulse Eco emulsion. We'll look at a brief comparison to other natural emulsifiers, and we'll look at an SPF 30 sunscreen formulation. So this is some of what we're going to be looking at and observing with Lipomulse Eco. So how to use Lipomulse Eco? Well, I already mentioned that these are oil and water emulsifiers, and they're used as an emulsifier pair. So it would be Lipomulse Eco H and Lipomulse Eco L, or Lipomulse Eco H and Lipomulse Eco L2. So we create the emulsifier pair and use it in the formulation. The typical use levels for Lipomulse Eco will be between 3 to 6% of the emulsifier pair. And we've been doing a significant amount of investigation looking at the type of ratios that you would use. And these are starting point recommendation, because this can change as we have different types of systems, or emotions. But some of what we've seen so far is that the use ratio for natural oils, the ratio is 2 to 1, or meaning that 2 parts of one of the low HLBs and 1 part of the high HLB. Or maybe it would be, or it could also be, not maybe, it could also be 2 to 2.5 to 1. So when it's calculated, you would then be able to see the customer or the lab will formulate to this ratio when they're using natural oils. Now, if instead we're using esters, then the ratio shifts or changes slightly, with the low HLB at 1.5 and the high HLB at 1. So the ratio 1.5 to 1, or continuing up to 2 to 1. And as I mentioned, these ratios are starting point recommendations, and they may need to be adjusted to account for different required HLBs of different systems. And I'm going to show you, as we move through the presentation, an example of where we had to change the ratio in order to create the formulation that we were looking for. So this is starting point recommendation. Also, we have just completed the first version of the formulating guidelines for Lipomulse Eco. It contains the information that you see on this slide, plus other additional information. And after this net meeting training, either today or tomorrow, I'm going to be sending out to everybody the formulating guidelines for Lipomulse Eco. So everyone will have that to review and then discuss with customers and send copies of the formulating guidelines to customers. So you'll have the majority of the information in one document on how to use Lipomulse Eco. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yes.
Please, do you have any recommendation about the presentation of natural oils or esters? Can we use the same presentation like when we are formulating with Lipomulse Lux, for example, 15% or 30%, something like that?
Okay. We are still working on how high of a concentration can be used. We know from the work we've been doing with the organic sunscreen that we have been able to add about 25% of an organic sunscreen and keep the formulation stable. And I'll show you those results. For natural oils, it's something we still have under stability testing. We have created formulations at 20% and 30% with Lipomulse Eco, and that's some of the work that's continuing. So we'll have more information soon, but we don't have all of the final information on how high of a concentration we can use, but we are working on that.
Thank you, Coach, because I'm just asking because the previous test we did in Brazil, we found that using natural oils, the emulsion is more stable and we have a very good appearance just because of this. But we are continuing on test just to check it if you have other recommendation about that.
And actually, you'll be able to see when I show some formulations, some of the natural oils that we've used also. So yes, we've gotten some very good results with natural oils and with butters. So very, very good results. So we may have additional recommendations, but we're still working on how high of a concentration we think we can use. But there'll be more information that you'll see with oils and butters as we continue. Okay. And anyone who has, you're welcome. And anyone who has any questions while I'm talking, please let me know. What I'm going to try to do is I will stop at certain points and then ask if you have questions. But if you have a question and I haven't stopped, please feel free to ask. Okay, then continuing on with ease of use. So we know that we can use a direct emulsification process, and it's a hot process because we saw that all three of the emulsifiers are solid, so they have to be melted. So this is a hot process emulsifier. And typical temperature of addition is that what we normally would use between 75 and 80 degrees C. So the emulsifiers are added into the oil phase, heated to 75 to 80 C. And then just as a standard process, we have the water phase heated also to 75 to 80 degrees C. And the oil phase is added to the water phase, and we create the emulsion. Now, this is with standard mixing speed. In the lab in Warren, we have standardized our mixing speed for this project at 450 RPM. And typically when you use this process, our standard process, you would create formulations that have lotion-type viscosity. So that's our first process. Then the second process has to do with adding additional energy. And what we found is that if we use our standard process that you see here, we create the emulsion, we allow the emulsion to continue to stir for approximately 10 minutes, and then we add additional high-speed mixing, in our case homogenization, we're able to increase the viscosity significantly of the formulation. So that would be what I'll call right now our second process. Producing the emulsion, standard speed, homogenizing for between 3 and 5 minutes, stopping the homogenization, and then standard mixing to cool the emulsion to room temperature. This does show that Eco is versatile because you can create standard lotion viscosities, or you can really increase the viscosity by adding or adding a higher speed mixing or shear over for a short amount of time. And that's what I'm going to show you next, how this functions, or how Eco functions. Now, this is one of our original test formulations, the system using only esters. We had 2 original test formulations for this project, an ester system and a natural oil system. So we could evaluate the different compositions that were being produced in R&D to see how they would function. So a very simple system, and I'll explain why we did this. We used the Lipomulse Eco at a higher concentration, and we used a lower concentration of emollient. So here we have Lipomulse 70 at 8%. Typically at 8% you would be using a lower emulsifier level. But the reason this was developed this way was that we could also test sensory of the emulsifiers that were being produced. So in this formulation, when you touch it, the Lipomulse 70 is the lighter feel emollient, so you do feel it as the original and intermediate feel, but then really the final feel is of the emulsifier. So we could tell, were we getting a very smooth emulsifier type feel. And the formulations or the compositions that are the Eco products created this very good sensory feel. So that's why this formulation was developed the way it is. So if we look at the effect, I mentioned of mixing speed and also time, we see the Lipomulse Eco formulation with the ester, the ester blend, the Lipomulse 70. And if we use our standard propeller mixing, what we find is that in 24 hours, we have a viscosity of approximately 50,000 centipoise, and then the viscosity continues to build to about 3 days when it's stable. So we see 50,000, 60,000, and then 62,000 centipoise. So with the propeller, these are our results. Then the same formulation, but now we do the process with propeller. Then after the emulsion forms, we homogenize for between 3 and 5 minutes. And you can see now how the polymeric emulsifiers are being, if you like to call it, activated. So here, after 24 hours, we have 170,000 centipoise. After 2 days, 200,000. And after 3 days, 240,000. And we see the emulsion viscosity stabilizing at about 3 days. So we can see that, in effect, Eco is very versatile because the customer can take the exact same formulation and create either a lotion or what would be a soft cream. So a lot of versatility. Also, what I'd like to point out to everyone is this is 82% water. So for a soft cream, with this viscosity, this is also a very economical formulation. So now we'll take a look at our second test system, and this is the system with the natural oil. Exactly the same concept, but now instead of using an ester, we're using Lipomulse Eco, which is avocado oil. And if we look at the effect of mixing speed and time, we see a similar type of result. We see for just the propeller system, mixing system, we start at 30,000 or 32,000 centipoise, and in 3 days we stabilize at about 40,000 centipoise. So not really a very significant build in viscosity. And then for the second procedure, which is using a short amount of time for homogenization, we have 160,000 at 24 hours, and then increasing to 250 at 2 days and 260 at 3 days. So stabilizing at 3 days. So we can see that in the case of the natural oil, we have the same type of behavior. Standard propeller mixing, a lotion-like viscosity. With the short period of homogenization, we have more of a soft cream. So these types of results are also very much known for other natural emulsifiers. And I want to mention that now so everyone realizes that customers see similar effects and that this is not unusual for Lipomulse Eco to perform this way. When we did the original customer interviews and we asked them about the emulsifiers or the natural emulsifiers that they had used or would like to use, the top 3 chemistries of natural emulsifiers that customers mentioned were the polyglucoside chemistry, the sucrose ester chemistries, and the polyglycerol ester chemistry. So most customers we talked to were familiar with and had used any of these. And all of these 3 chemistries are considered by customers to be higher priced chemistry. So when we were developing Eco, we wanted to have performance similar to these types of chemistries, but also to be more cost effective. So now in this next slide, what I'm going to show everyone is how one of these other chemistries performs. So you can see that Eco has similar performance to these other chemistries in a way. So the emulsifier system that we're going to be looking at is one of the top chemistries that was discussed, and this is Montanol 68. And Montanol 68 is cetyl alcohol and cetyl glucoside. That's its inky name. So it is one of the glucosides. And we're going to be evaluating it here at the same use level as what we're doing with Lipomulse Eco. Now I want to mention that when you look at this, it says 6.5%. And you know that with Lipomulse Eco, we were using a total of 5%. The reason we're using 6.5% is because Montanol 68 already contains the cetyl alcohol. So if we look at our test formulation, the total combination of the Eco is 5, and the cetyl alcohol is 1.5%. So basically, in this evaluation, this is the reason why we use 6.5% of Montanol 68. So this is the parity or the comparison between Eco and Montanol 68. So if we look at the first formulation in this column, this is the esters formulation with the Lipomulse 70 at 8%. And then we take a look at the performance. And with propeller mixing, we found in 24 hours, the viscosity is very low, about 16,000 centipoise, and not really building any viscosity after 3 days with 18,000 centipoise. Very different than Lipomulse Eco. And then when we use the process that uses the short amount of homogenization, between 3 and 5 minutes after the emulsifier forms, we see we have a 24-hour viscosity of 162,000 and a 3-day viscosity of 206,000. These results are much closer with the homogenization to what we saw with Lipomulse Eco. So the results for the ester system were not very good with Montanol 68 without homogenization. Then next, we can take a look at this column, and this is using Lipomulse A, so the avocado oil at 8% in the system. Now with the propeller, we see very good performance. We do see good performance if we're interested in performance that is this high in viscosity. So we see 24 hours at 125 and 3 hours at 168,000 centipoise. And then with homogenization, the ability to basically have the same results that we saw with the esters. So we have 156,000 at 24 hours and 252,000 at 3 days. So we can look at the performance of Montanol 68 in comparison to Lipomulse Eco. So this will give you an idea with one of the competitive emulsifiers that we've been testing. And as I already mentioned, we know from reviewing the literature from many competitive emulsifiers that the viscosities do increase with added shear. And in some cases, the emulsifiers actually say that you need shear to really activate the emulsifier. So the use of homogenization to bring higher viscosity. We are continuing the work with sucrose esters. We'll have that information shortly. And we're looking at potentially 2 other emulsifiers to give us additional information. That work is still to be started. The sucrose ester work is in progress right now. Okay, before I go on to the next part, does anybody have any questions about the information with the original test system and also the competitive emulsifier. Okay, so we'll continue. Now what we're looking at is using lower emulsifier levels here, and this is with the natural oil system. And this would be more typical of what we would think customers would do, because we know if you have lower levels of natural oils, you typically are using lower levels of the emulsifier. So this is looking at using 3% and 4% of the Lipomulse Eco emulsifier pair with Lipomulse A, the avocado oil. So here you'll be able to see some differences between using either L or L2. So this first column is Lipomulse Eco L, Lipomulse Eco H with Lipomulse Eco L2 at the ratio we mentioned at the beginning, and the 8% avocado oil. And we would expect that using 3% of the emulsifier, that we would obtain viscosities that are more like lotion-like or lower viscosity. And that's what we have. 24 hours, 29,000, 3 days, 41,000. So a lotion-type viscosity. Then we can look at the next column. This is now 4% of Eco H and Eco L as a total, 8% of the avocado oil, and here now we have a viscosity of around 62,000, and after 3 days, about 89,000. So we see how the viscosities are increasing as we have a higher concentration of emulsifier. Then, in the last two columns, we'll look at the combination of Lipomulse Eco H with Lipomulse Eco L2. So here, the 3% combination, and we see the 43,000 and the 62,000. Now we start to see the differences between L and L2. So these are the results with L, and these are the results with L2, both at 3%. Total system. So we can see there's becoming reasonable difference between the emulsifier pairs. And then finally, we see the last column is 4% of the total of Lipomulse Eco H and Lipomulse Eco L2 with 8% of avocado oil. And now we see we have the 80,000 and 110,000. So in general, in the systems we've been working with, when you combine Lipomulse Eco L and Lipomulse Eco H with Lipomulse Eco L2, we're finding somewhat higher viscosity in the emulsions that are formed. So one of the differences between using either L or L2. Okay. Then we looked at the different use levels. So we looked at results of 3, 4, and 5%. We see how viscosities have continued to increase based on how we can progressively increase the viscosity based on the percentage of Lipomulse Eco that's being used. Then next we're going to look at an SPF 30 sunscreen formulation. And as you can see, these are all organic sunscreens that we're using. And we're going to be comparing, we've done a lot of work in this area. We're only showing a few of the ones, showing a limited example here. So we're going to be looking at the competitive emulsifier is Montanol 68, and then we will look at the combinations of Eco H with either L or L2. This is an example of where we needed to change the ratio. When we talked about the ratios in the beginning, in this case, with these organic sunscreens, we had to change the ratio to obtain stable emulsions as well as these very bright white, aesthetically pleasing emulsions. So this is the reason we changed the ratio. But first what we'll do is we'll look at Montanol 68 at the 6.5% we had used before. And what we see is if we look at the propeller mixing, the first day is 212,000 centipoints. And also in this study, we used two different high shear rates. So we created part of this study was at 2,000 RPM. So we can see that, and this is 2,000 RPM for 3 to 5 minutes after the emulsion has formed with standard propeller mixing. And we can see there is a difference in viscosity, but the 2,000 RPM has not really activated the emulsifier pair significantly. But then when we run this, we continue with the experiment, and we have this as a separate batch, and we're using the standard propeller, and then 4,000 RPM to 3 to 5 minutes. We can see now there is a much higher viscosity obtained because we have 273,000. So standard mixing, a short amount of time of 2,000 RPM, and then for a short amount of time at 4,000 RPM. So we can see the effect on the Montanol 68. Then on the second day, when we look at it again at the propeller, we see the viscosity build from 212 to 266. For the 2,000 RPM, from 240 to 3,000 to 300,000. And then for the 4,000 RPM, the 273 up to 342. So Montanol 68 building viscosity with time, just as we'll see with Lipomulse Eco. That's the purple column. Then if we look at the light blue column, this is going to be Lipomulse Eco H with Lipomulse Eco L. And you'll see now we've actually inverted the ratio because for these organic sunscreens, better results are obtained by using a higher percentage of Lipomulse Eco H. So we see the 2.5 and the 2. We use a slightly higher amount of fatty alcohol. We're looking at different results. We're looking at changing different parameters. And what we see is that we're also able to create good viscosities using either the propeller or the 2,000 RPM or the 4,000 RPM. So the ability to create different types of viscosities depending on these procedures that we're using. But all of these very much within a range, which then indicates that this formulation can be very successfully prepared just using propeller mixing. And then continuing with the darker blue column, now we're looking at Eco H with Eco L2. Also we changed the ratio, and what we found is that we also have good results. The 1 day of propeller 78, after 2 days 113. What we also found was the 2,000 RPM did not have a significant change, and also the 4,000. So in this very high SPF sunscreen formulation, we can get very good results just with propeller mixing. So it is very dependent on the oil phase in the system. is work that we're continuing the investigation of the SPF 30 sunscreen. But I wanted to show everyone this information now so you can see that this formulation can be produced both very successfully just with standard propellant. Okay, so I'll stop now and ask if anybody has any questions. Okay, then we'll continue. So talking about formation of liquid crystals, I've already said a lot about this. We know liquid crystals, emulsifiers that form liquid crystals form very stable systems. So this is one of the emulsions. This is actually one of the simple test systems looking at the emulsion under polarized light, and we see hundreds of liquid crystals in the formulation. So we know we'll have very bright white emulsions. We'll have good emulsion stability. Liquid crystals will also have the possibility to provide enhanced moisturization, and we do plan on studying this, so we'll have additional data for potential for enhanced moisturization. This is one of the studies we are going to start working on. And of course, there could be increased delivery of actives to the skin. This could be possible, but this is only a suggestion. We will not be working in this area of increased delivery of actives. We're only going to work on enhanced moisturization. Okay, then continuing, we'll take a look at what type of work are we still doing in the lab. Well, in Warren, we are going to be working with inorganic sunscreen using titanium dioxide, zinc oxide, or combinations of the two. This is work that we still need to begin. We did some preliminary work here, but we need to do more work for the inorganic sunscreens. We're going to continue and do some additional work with the organic sunscreens that we've started already. We saw that we are doing comparison to other natural emulsifiers. Saw the comparison with Montanol 68, and we're working with sucrose esters now, so we'll have more data. And we continue toward the higher levels of natural oil. That's under evaluation, both in Warren and in some of the other laboratories, some of our other Vantage laboratories. So we're looking at different possibilities. Also in the laboratory in Lipo, France, Helene is looking at further effects of shearing. So she's doing some work with the types of mixers that she uses and are used in Europe to look at what happens with higher shear rates. So that's another piece of work that's ongoing. And Solange is doing work in in Vantage Brazil. I have to remember to switch over to Vantage. And Adriana has done some work in the lab in Mexico. So we're looking at different types of studies so that we can bring more data for everyone to use. So just continuing with Lipomulse Eco, just as a little, before we continue with formulation, Eco was developed to be cost effective so that formulators would have a choice of a natural emulsifier that was at a lower price. So Lipomulse Eco will give your customers a lower cost option or a new option when they're looking at creating natural formulation. As far as the test formulations that we've worked with, the two formulations that I mentioned here, these were the demo samples that we showed both in cosmetics in Barcelona and at Suppliers Day in the New York area. And these two formulations, and I'm going to explain them briefly, were developed just as prototypes. These are not finished formulations. They're to exhibit or show a concept to the formulator or to the customer. So, and these formulations are available as demo samples if you would like to use them. So you can send me an email and we can send you these two demo samples if we're able to ship to your country. So here, the first one is the day cream, and this is actually one of our prototypes. Not this prototype is actually one of our test formulations. And I did explain it briefly at the beginning. This formulation was developed using a low amount of ester, the Lipomulse 70 at 8%, and a higher amount of emulsifier at 5% between the Eco H and the Eco L. And the reason for this was so the customer can experience the sensory. So they first feel the Lipomulse 70, and then that feel transitions, and what they feel are the actual emulsifiers in the system. So it shows that the emulsifiers are not going to give a waxy final feel, that the final feel is very smooth. So very good sensory from the Lipomulse Eco emulsifier. And also, I mentioned that this formulation does not contain a fragrance, so you're able to then show the customer that these are very low odor emulsifiers. There's no unpleasant odor from the formulation. And then the second formulation, which is a body cream, and this is a natural theme formulation, contains a little higher level of the Lipomulse Eco. And then it contains 7% of Lipomulse A and 3% of isopropyl 35. This formulation was developed to show customers that we can create formulations that are more substantive. So from the use of the isopropyl 35, we have a more substantive feel. The sensory is more substantive, but there's no tackiness, there's no waxy feel. So the combination, the customer can see that the Eco H and the Eco L produce a very good sensory, just as we were showing in the day cream. And just like with the day cream, the formulations are very low odor, so the customer can see that there's no odor. And I'll just say that I was in Europe last week promoting Lipomulse Eco, and every customer who smelled these formulations, because they wanted to see what they smelled like, that they were very happy with the fact that they were such low odor materials, because they had commented that many natural-based materials, as we know, can have, in part, higher odors. So very good response from the European customers on the low odor characteristics of Eco, as well as the very good sensory feel from Eco by looking at these two very simple prototype formulations. So these are demo formulations. Okay, so as far as sales tools, everyone has, or everyone should have, the Lipomulse Eco sell sheet. It is in English, and I think Bruno will be working toward a Spanish version. I sent this out a few weeks ago, so everyone should have it. There will be the Lipomulse Eco presentation. It's going to be similar to this, but it'll have some of the slides removed. The one that you're looking at here that says sales tools would not be in a presentation that was intended for customers. So within the next week or two, I'm going to send everybody the presentation that will be for customers. And instead of saying LIPO, it will have the Vantage template. So that'll be the customer version. We have the formulating guidelines completed, at least This will be the first version. I'm sure there'll be more information to add in the future. Everyone will receive the formulating guidelines this week. You can read them. You can send them to customers. And hopefully you'll be able to explain much of what I've talked about already. We do have the simple demo formulations available for use, as I just explained how they're intended to be used. And then available just starting yesterday, and you'll be getting an email also about this week, we have a demo formulation sample kit for Lipomulse Eco to show more complete formulation. So next we'll take a look at the formulation demo set. It's 4 formulations. It's a lotion, a soft cream, and a body butter, and a hair conditioner. And it demonstrates how Eco can be used to create different types of formulations. And that has a lot of versatility. So we'll take a look at the formulation. The first one is the body lotion. That's what's going to be in this pump. And the body lotion is using a lower percentage of the combination of the 2 Lipomulse Eco products. So here we have 3.5% to create a lotion. We're pairing it with, or we're using as the emollient phase, Lipovol cranberry, Lipovol G, which is grapeseed oil, and the isojojoba butter 35. And this lotion has a very nice soft feel. It's elegant. It very makes the skin feel moisturized. And you can see here its viscosity is approximately 40,000 centipoise. So we have a pumpable lotion with Lipomulse Eco. Then we have the moisturizing cream. That's going to be the product in a smaller 1-ounce jar. And here we're using, because we're creating a cream and we want it to be more substantive, we have the total of 5% of Lipomulse Eco. And you'll see here the emollient phase, we're using the acetyl esters or liponate SPF veg. We decided to add some coconut oil. You see it in many formulations now. So we have the Lipovol C76. We also decided to add Lipomulse O, olive oil, and we have jojoba oil. So here we have an oil phase of 17.5%. So we're able to create a rather luxurious moisturizing cream, one that's going to be substantive to the skin. It's a softer cream texture, and its viscosity is about 160,000 centipoise. So we can see building higher viscosity with Lipomulse Eco as we start to increase the oil phase. And then the third formulation for skincare is the body butter. The body butter is in the more flat container, more body butter-like container. And what we're going to be doing here, we're still using Lipomulse Eco, the combination at 5%. And then we can take a look at the emollient phase, and we have 3% of veg, 5% of avocado oil, 4% of grapeseed oil, and 6% of mango butter, the lipo butter refined mango. So here we have an oil phase also. Now we have 18%. But we're able to create more of a firm butter type of formulation. So this is going to show customers that firm butter formulations are possible with Lipomulse Eco. So if we look back at the moisturizing cream, when we're using the jojoba oil, because we have basically the same concentration oil build the viscosity to a viscosity of a firm body butter. And the viscosity here is 360,000 centigrade. So a true butter formulation. So being able to show customers we can create lotions, we can create moisturizing creams, and we can create body butters using Lipomulse Eco. And then the last formulation example for this demo set is a hair conditioner with Lipomulse Eco. And here what you see is that we're still using the 5% of the combination of the Lipomulse Eco. And this formulation, although it's natural steam, is actually the natural content is 97%. Here in the U.S., you see many natural formulations, and when you read the label, especially when you're looking at hair conditioners, they will say, as in the case of First Speed, that the formulation is 97% natural because they're still using the traditional conditioning cloth like citronellum chloride. So we did the same thing. We continue to use a traditional cloth, and then we have the formulation with Eco, and then using a certain amount of natural materials in the emollient phase, using fetal esters, a small amount of argan oil, a little more, a higher level of lipomole to bring more shine to the hair, and then lipo butter refined mango. So this will show customers you can prepare natural type formulations for hair conditioner. So the fourth of the demo formulation. So these are the formulations in the demo set. I'm going to be sending out the PDF for all the formulations to everybody. It's all shown this week, so you'll have the formulations to use customers. I will also mention that for everyone in Latin America, we also produce this very similar hair conditioner formulation using one of the natural cloths from Colonial Chemical, and that cloth is sugar cloth, and it also produces the hair conditioner, but the viscosity is somewhat lower. There's definitely a difference between using citronellum chloride and sugar cloth. You have a different viscosity. This is more of a high viscosity, very luxurious conditioner with citronellum chloride. The sugar cloth is somewhat lower viscosity. So that one would be really the totally natural steam formulation, and that is available also as a paper copy. So we have either the 97% natural or the all natural formulation. So both of those are available, but we didn't choose to feature that as a demo sample. Okay, so that will give you an overview of the demo formulation that we have available now. Okay, so this is all of the information that I wanted to present today on Lipomulse Eco. We did get we've gotten a very good response to Lipomulse Eco, both in cosmetics and suppliers today. So we're hopeful that this will be a product that many customers are interested in using as they start to develop new natural formulations. So I will ask now, does anyone have any questions about anything with Lipomulse Eco?
This is Christian Chantin from Toronto. What are the HLB values for the 3 Ecos?
Okay, we're still working on deciding the final HLB, but because depending on how it's calculated, you can get different values, but by working with them in formulations and looking at the way they perform, we're becoming much closer to the actual value. So right now, I'm just going to I'll give you ranges. For the Eco H, which is the high HLB, the range is between 10 and 12. And for the two low HLBs, the range is between 4 and 5.5. So we are narrowing down, and probably we're still running some experiments, but very soon we'll have an actual value. But they would be the ranges.
Another question, is it EcoCert?
Not yet. We are working on EcoCert for these products. The propane diol that we use as starter material already has EcoCert status. So we believe that we will receive EcoCert for all three of the products.
One question to you again. You said it's a plant derived. From what plant is it derived?
Sorry, can you repeat that one more time? I think I understood, but it was a little bit of a static on the line.
Yeah. From what plant are they derived?
Okay. The Lipomulse Eco propane diol is from a corn. It's derived from corn. The propane diol is from DuPont Tate and Lyle, and DuPont Tate and Lyle does have non-GMO status for the propane diol. And so that's from corn. And then, of course, the stearate is from palm. So it's a corn and palm source. Any other questions?
Are they globally approved?
Are they what? I'm sorry, are they approved how?
Are they globally approved?
Oh, there's some kind of static in the background. Can you say it once again?
Are they globally approved?
Oh, globally approved. Sorry. Unfortunately, each time that she spoke, I couldn't quite understand exactly because there was static. Maybe it's that one. As far as global approval, we do not at this time have approval for China. We're working on that, but this is going to be a continuing process for China. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Any other questions from anyone?
So I think your natural quat with the sugar quat. What is your formulation number?
I'd have to get that and send it to you. It's probably the next one. Probably the next one, but it could be 2 or 3 higher. So yeah, so I have to just look that up. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions from anyone? Okay. So as always, after you review the information, if you have any questions, please send me an email, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. During the next few days, or possibly even today or tomorrow, you will receive from me this presentation, which is intended for your use. It will say on it not to be sent to customers. As I mentioned, I'm working on the customer version, which will say Vantage in the it will have Vantage in place of Litho, and it will be missing a few of the slides that are not intended for customers to see. So you'll get that presentation probably next week. But this week you'll have this presentation to review. You'll also receive a separate email with the formulating guidelines, and you'll receive a third email that will have the formulation for the demo sample. So everyone will have all of the information. And I think that's everything for now. I would like to thank everyone for your time and for attending the NET meeting. And any questions, please send me an email. And I wish everyone a very nice rest of the day and a very nice week. And I'll be talking to everyone again soon. So thank you again, everyone. And goodbye. Bye-bye.